just looked over the study guide. We went through that in a fair bit of detail, the expectations and the things you need to be successful in the course. So if you missed that, you can go on the WASA archive, which they actually show you how to do that at the very end of the study guide. Okay, and or you can go on to YouTube and you can look on my channel. It's PW WASA. Okay, on my YouTube channel. Either way, you can get the lessons. Now there might be a lag of a day or two between when we did the class and when it actually ends up on YouTube, but it should be in the archive straight away. Okay, great. So we're going to, our class then runs from 8 till 9 every night. We're going to start as close as we can to 8 o'clock. See, we're actually pretty close tonight. And we'll go, you know, to sort of 9-ish. And that's what we'll do. Now, it's 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday. Now, if you think about this as a regular class, if this was a regular high school class, it would be 5 days a week, probably 75 minutes a day. So we aren't getting quite the full amount of class time. So you are expected to do some reading on your own and do some of the questions on your own. Okay, it'll just it'll help you. All right. So the first unit then. So this is Unit 1 and Lesson 1. Okay, and this is called Worldview. Now, what we're going to do in the course, we're going to go through different topics, and a lot of times we're going to maybe start with what your own ideas are. Okay, so this isn't me telling you my ideas or someone from the book telling you their ideas. A lot of times we want to explore our own ideas first, and then maybe look at some other people's ideas. That's really, I think, what this is really all about. Okay. So, you know, we talk about worldview. And, you know, last night I mentioned a little bit, because when I tell people I'm from Ottawa, people go, oh, Ottawa. But really, I'm actually from outside of Ottawa. You know, I call Ottawa my hometown. I spent a lot of time there. I went to school there. But really, I grew up in the country. I grew up in the Ottawa Valley. So, you know, people might say, oh, you know, the winters, you must hate the winters up here. It's really cold. No, actually, I like the winters up here because my worldview growing up was that winter was a great time. I used to go snowmobiling, cross-country ski, snowshoe, did a lot of winter camping growing up. So that's what I value. That's what I enjoy. So when I come up to the north, I've lived here for quite a while now, actually, probably 9 years now in the north. So when I come up to the north, I value the winter. I enjoy the being outside, and I don't the cold doesn't bother me nearly as much as people might think. Okay, so there's the thing about the worldview, right? You know, some people dread the winter, and then some of us really like it, and it really depends on your background. It depends on your history. It depends on your relationship to, you know, the world around you. Okay. And I know that, you know, in some of the communities I've been in, the winter roads are a really important thing. So then people are looking forward to that kind of opening, and that happens in the winter too. So let's talk about the worldview. Okay. Now, I'm not necessarily going to read every single thing in the course material. So this is Unit 1, the handout. If you don't have it, check with your DEC in your community, and they'll get you that. And if not, if for some reason you can't, just get a hold of me at WASA. You can find me on Facebook. I'm PW WASA on Facebook. HSA. You can send me a message. I think you have to friend me first. And don't worry, if you friend me on Facebook, I'm not going to put any cartoons on your feed. I'm not going to send you any funny YouTube videos or invite you to play Candy Crush or anything like that. I'm just going to use it for work, okay? You know, well, you'll see some information about this course and maybe some of the other courses I teach. Okay, so you don't have to worry about me spamming you on Facebook. So you can get a hold of me on Facebook and just message me and say, hey, I need a copy of the unit or something like that, whatever you're missing. Now, you're also supposed to have a textbook, which is called Aboriginal Beliefs, Values, and Aspirations. I haven't had much success hearing back from the DECs whether or not they have those available. So you might have to ask, and if they don't, the first couple of pages you're going to need are actually on Facebook. You can go back and find me on Facebook, and you'll see that I posted a couple of pages that kind of help you from the textbook until we can sort out the textbook situation. All right. So when we talk about a worldview, okay, worldview is a collection of beliefs, values, and assumptions held by an individual or a group about life, people, and the universe and the interrelationships among them. Okay, so worldview is the way people view and interpret the world around them. Okay. Now, in the course material, they actually give you something kind of helpful here, and it's on the next page. Let's just talk a little bit about what we have on page 2 of Unit 1 here. It says that some factors that may influence the world around you are listed in the web diagram. So that's on the next page. Your view may be influenced over the course of your lifetime, depending on what you learn, okay, the ideas you encounter, your experiences, and new views you may develop. Okay, and then it asks this question: what other factors do you think affect your worldview? In your experience, are some factors more important than others? Okay, so let's just flip forward. We'll come back to this bit, but this is the web. Okay, that they're talking about. Okay, so my worldview. So that's your worldview, not mine. Our own unique worldview. Okay, so what are the influences to your worldview? You may think that some of these are important, and you may think some of them really aren't important. Right? Family. Okay, how does your family influence your worldview? Right? That, how you look at the world may depend on your family, right? How your family looks at the world. Okay, your gender certainly, right, may have an influence on how you look at the world, right? What you see your role as being, what you see, right? Your socioeconomic status, certainly, right? And something I can relate to there is when I was a young man, I lived in Toronto, and it was terrible for me. It was terrible. I didn't have any money. I was broke, and I lived in Toronto, and it was really difficult because everyone else seemed to have money and I didn't. So my worldview about Toronto is maybe not nearly as nice as some other people who might have lived there and had more money and kind of looked at it as a fun place, right? So there are a lot of things that could influence your worldview. Okay, and you can take a look at that web and sort of ask yourself what are more important, what are less important. Some of them don't matter to you. Some of them matter a lot to you. Okay. You may actually have some things, some things that um, you could add to that, right? Life experiences, yeah. This is really, if I go back to, telling you about growing up in the Ottawa Valley, my life experiences, right? I had a snowmobile, right? And that made a huge difference to me. If I had never had a snowmobile, I probably wouldn't have developed the way I did. And it's funny that snowmobile was a gift. It wasn't something I got for myself. It wasn't something that my family got for me. It was actually a gift from a friend of our families who just said, we have this snowmobile and we're going to give it to this young man. So that made a huge difference to me. Okay. All right. Well, let's go back to the last paragraph on page 2 here. And it says here, and it says, Aboriginal people did not traditionally see the world as something to conquer. They lived in harmony with nature. Cooperating with each other and pleasing all the spirits around them were important ideas to continue to be important aspects of Aboriginal culture. Okay, so that's a worldview. Now, whether you agree with that or not, this is the authors of the course material sort of tell us that this is the case, the traditional case. Okay, and I'm sure that would influence how Aboriginal people um, interact um, with the world. Okay, so we're being asked here to do a couple of things in the course, and this is where um, because right now, let's see here. Um, Ideally, you would do this sort of in an interactive way. Okay, so we would talk about it. We'd do some of these. So I'm going to ask you to do this whenever you get. Oops, sorry. Whenever you get to this. Okay, now I'm going to have some problems with my smartboard here. That's happened. I've only been doing this for about, what, 9 months or something? I'm not really sure why my smartboard is, there we go. I guess. All right, give me another 9 months and I'll know how to use it, I guess. Okay, so for support question number 1, whoa, okay. Yeah, all right. So it says make a list of 5 flat factors that influence your life. Okay, so this is your life. Okay, and give one reason why you chose it. That's really kind of interesting. So I would encourage you to do this. You don't. This is support question, so you don't have to send this in. Okay, it would be interesting to share it. I would invite you to share it, but you don't have to. Okay, certainly this is up to you. Make a list of 5 factors that influence your life and give a reason why you chose it. Okay, so you know, I could think of something like, um, I'll try and do it for myself. And again, this is from a personal thing. So I'm just going to model how I would go about this because it's a hard kind of question because it asks you to look inward. Okay. So one is really relatively easy for me, and I'm going to say education. Okay. Education. So, um, so when I say education, the reason I chose it is because it's really kind of it's guided my life. Okay, and it has provided opportunities for me. Okay, so when I say it guided my life, in that I enjoyed school. I wasn't necessarily always really good at school. Okay, so that's something you think, oh, somebody that likes education was good at school. No, there were times when it was easier than other times, and certainly there were times when it was crushingly difficult. I mean, really super difficult. I hit a stretch in high school that was just awful. But the thing is, I always liked education. I always liked learning things. And so that's really kind of helped me along, even when I had some very serious problems. It was always this belief that I could somehow overcome it. Okay, I never had this idea that I was just not going to be able to do something, and sometimes it maybe meant that I took on maybe stuff that was really hard for me, just because I had this belief I could always do it. Okay, so that's it. So education is always really, I've always learned stuff. I've always taken courses, and even I'm a teacher now, but I still take night classes. And try and take one night class a year. Um, I've been to school a couple of times. I was working and went back to school, so it's really kind of guided me along. And of course, it's opened up opportunities because I've chosen to learn some things that are useful to other people, and that the other people are that I like doing, and that other people are willing to pay me to do. So, kind of been a great thing. Okay, so this is what we're looking for in this sort of list. We're looking for factors that influence your life, right? And you can look back on the web here, right, and kind of decide, right? So, for example, let's say we look at neighborhood. I don't really think my neighborhood growing up influenced me much at all, really. I don't think so, maybe, right? Cultural traditions, my upbringing, not at all. I don't think it really influenced me much, right? But there you go. So, um, hmm, who knows? Friends, certainly. Some of my friends influenced me. Significant others, certainly, as I've gotten a little older. You know, my partner has definitely had a very profound influence on me in a sense that um, yeah, I mean, really made a difference. So, and I think I said education, so I liked that one. Okay, yeah, I would say life experiences maybe is number two, but this is a challenging kind of chart to fill in. It's the sort of thing you might be able to fill in a couple of them and then come back later on, or maybe even ask someone who knows you well what influenced you. Okay, so why we're doing this is we want you to understand your worldview. Okay. Because if something has influenced you, it's kind of helpful to understand, you know, what that thing is, or what those multiple things, the top factors that influence you, right? You know, a good example, and you know, a very minor example. I mean, if you're on Facebook and you have a bunch of friends on Facebook and they're talking about something, maybe they're talking about a movie, maybe they're talking about something they want to buy. That does that influence you? Because I know it influences me quite a bit. You know, I have some hobbies, and when I go on Facebook and some of my friends are talking about our shared hobbies, yeah, I mean, I've gone and bought stuff because they were talking about things. So, yeah, it does influence us quite a bit sometimes. All right, well, let's take a look at support question two. So remember, the support questions are for you, and they're to help you understand the material and kind of find your way through it. Okay, so that's why they're there. You don't send in the support questions. If you wanted to call in, then certainly that would, um, you know, you'd be welcome to share things, but I'm not going to make anyone share anything. I'm not going to put anyone on the spot. Okay, that's not the way I want to do this. Now, it says using your textbook, which you don't have, and or a dictionary, define the following terms. Okay? So what they're doing is they're asking us to go on to, oh, wait. You see, now there's where we talk about influences, right? Whoever wrote this, their worldview is a little different. How about Google? Can't we? What's a dictionary? Let's forget that. Use Google. And look up these terms. Isn't that better? Isn't that? I mean, I think that's really what they meant to say. Okay. So what is a community? Um, you know, what does that mean to you? And it's funny because when as an educator, I have a different view maybe of what a community is, because it's an important concept in education. It's an important concept in a classroom. That the members of the classroom, the students, the teachers, everyone in there, kind of form their own community within the classroom. But I think that they're really looking for something maybe a little bit um, like a step back um, in this. Let's see. No, I don't. Okay, so we'll have to actually Google that community. Okay. Belief, yeah, perspective, value, aspiration, history, culture, attitude. Yeah, so quite a few things that we're really um, trying to find. I'm just going to look here and see if I have. I thought I might have some definitions ready to go here for you. Okay, I guess not. All right, well we can talk about those at some point. Okay. Yeah. So if you're going to go on to Google, maybe let's just try that. Let's try community here. So when you go on to Google, you kind of have to be careful. Oh, look at that. 155th anniversary of the Pony Express. That's the Google Doodle today. All right, so it was community. Now, it used to be that you could do this, define with a colon, and just define community. How about that? Gee. There you go. Okay. And, okay, community. It says a group of people living in the same place or having a particular characteristic in common. Okay, so that sounds pretty good. And then the second one, a feeling of fellowship with others as a result of sharing common attitudes, interests, and goals. Oh, that's kind of interesting. Okay, so if I think about that, when I think about a community as in a group of students and a teacher all together to learn something in a class, I think that that second definition, right, community, right, that if you feel comfortable in the class, you feel like you're supported, you feel like you can raise your hand and talk about stuff, and you can make mistakes, take risks to make mistakes, and learn things from each other. That's a really good feeling, right? That's a good sense of community. Um, I think that a lot of us think about community as the first definition, right? A group of people living in the same place or having a particular characteristic in common, right? So you may live in a community, you're from a community, and that may sort of define your some of your identity, anyways, and certainly some of your worldview. Okay, so that's how we go about looking these up. It's kind of tricky. You want to make sure that you either get the Google definition, or you get something that's an actual dictionary, right? Once you start getting to Wikipedia and some of the other ones, you might not necessarily be getting as accurate a definition as what you would want. Okay. All right, so that's all this is really, is just to look up the words and really just sort of think about it. When it says define the terms, don't do a lot of writing, just kind of try and distill it down to a point form, okay, when you're doing this. Okay. Now, the next thing we want to do here is look in the textbook, which is page 8. So I do have pages of the textbook. I put them on Facebook, and if you can't find them on Facebook, it's fine. I have them actually right here. Okay, so this is page 8, and just so that you can read it, I'm just going to leave it kind of at the big version. We'll just kind of scroll through it. So what it says is when you're reading when you're reading one of these articles from the textbook, okay, sometimes they're going to give you some definitions on the side, which is kind of helpful, right? And sometimes they will give you some ideas for additional reading here. Okay. So what this article is about is how to understand the point of view of um, the author of an article. So when you're reading things, okay, you have a worldview, you have a point of view. You know, I may read things and I have a different point of view, right? So when you're reading an article, it's kind of helpful to you, in order to understand the article, to understand the author's point of view. Okay. So it says here, it says every spoken or written word comes from a point of view or a perspective. All right, as you continue to work in this textbook, you will read about and hear from many different people on a variety of issues. In order to understand greater understanding of a text, in order to gain greater understanding of a text, speech, or image, it is important to know as much as possible about the writer's or speaker's point of view. Sometimes a person will tell you, but often it will be hidden. Okay? They may even assume that you share the same point of view. Okay. The advantage of understanding the points of view and perspectives of others is that you will be able to read, listen, and ask about what you are learning in an informed way. Okay, and then it summarizes it by saying that everyone's point of view reflects your background, your experiences, your culture. Okay, so that's really, and we've already talked about that. Okay, so now what they do here in the text, and I'm going to scroll down a little bit, um, is they give you, you do have this page available to you, as I say, on Facebook, or you can just contact me and I'll send you a copy of it. Okay, so they give you some questions to ask when you're going through either a reading something or listening to someone. You know, if you listen to a speaker, right? So you can ask questions. Okay. So for example, when you're reading an account of a specific event, you might ask questions such as who was involved? How did what took place affect each person or group? Whose point of view is being expressed? Um, whose is not represented? Okay, this is a big complaint. If you read the news, um, you know, go to the website CBC News, CTV News. If you read the comments, there's actually quite a lot of complaints about that because, and it's true. News articles are written from a point of view. I don't know that it's that they're deliberately suppressing one person or not representing one person, but they do tend to be written from a point of view. All right, what factors might have influenced the author's point of view? Okay, what is not mentioned that might be important, and what other questions should I ask? Okay, maybe they're right. Is the author biased? Right? Is the author being neutral or trying to, you know, that those are some questions you might ask, right? Has the author ever been to the North? When they're writing about the North, I'd sometimes cringe at how they talk about it. It's almost as if they've never been to the North, right? Or sometimes you can tell that they know quite a bit. So now they're going to say we're going to apply our skills here. There's an article in the course material that you can practice on. So it says choose a news article, print, television, or radio about a current issue. Well, print, you know what we mean. Television, you know, how about web? Yeah, about a current issue involving First Nations, Métis, or Inuit people. All right. Now, what points of view are expressed in the article? What beliefs or attitudes? So, okay, so it's going to be asking you all these questions. You basically would kind of have this list of questions. You know, at first you're going to have it written down because you want to remind yourself before you start reading, this is what you're looking for. Maybe as you're reading, kind of refresh your memory. But after a while, it becomes a habit. If you get used to reading this way, it really does become a habit. Now we talk about points of view, and you know, reading articles and things like that. I took when I was in grade 11 in high school. I took probably one of the most influential courses I've ever taken, and it was a media studies course. And basically, the whole thing, the teacher was showing us for the whole course how we young people were being manipulated by the media, by advertising, right? Basically, what the idea was that what they're trying to say here is that um, you know, everybody has a point of view, and a lot of times advertising are trying to persuade you to change your point of view and agree with them. And in some cases, even news articles or scholarly articles, or if you go to Wikipedia, that's really another one where they may be trying to influence you quite a bit. Okay, so when we talk about worldview, that really helped me because it made me a lot more aware of the fact that when I'm reading something, the person, you know, sounds friendly and everything, but they're trying to persuade me. Very often they're trying to persuade me that their point of view is correct. Okay, now, okay, so let's go back to the, let's see here. Yeah, we can go back to the course material. Now, I think it's a little easier for you because you should have it there. Maybe you have it. I don't know. Maybe you don't have it yet. So there's the course material. And, okay. I had a copy. Oh, yeah. Okay. I had a copy of page 8. And I don't know what I did with it, but okay, I have a copy of the textbook. Okay. So, okay, they give you some suggestions. So this is the article on page, what is it, page 4 of Unit 1. So it says, Cree Youth Walk for Idle No More gains more participants. And then the sub-headline is, the youngest participant is 11-year-old girl Abby Masty. Now, here we see that it's written by someone at CBC News. Now, does that sort of influence you a little bit when you see that? How does that make you feel when you see it's written by CBC News? Right? How would it make you feel if you saw it was written by one of your community members, or someone from Sioux Lookout, or maybe one of your teachers? Would you have a different view as you're getting ready to read it? Right? It can be very interesting because, I look for stuff like that. Okay, so then it shows a picture of the walkers, and then it's going to have this. They're going to describe what's going on in this article. Okay, so the questions they want you to ask yourself are: what points of view are being expressed in the article? What beliefs or attitudes are being expressed? What evidence in the article shows the writer's or speaker's point of view? So it says a group of Cree youth between the ages of 11 and 21 is continuing stress this morning from northern Quebec to Ottawa. 6 youths and 1 guide left the James Bay Cree community of, okay, that's the other side from where I used to be, so we'll let someone else tell me how to pronounce that. Yeah, I was in Saskatchewan for about 4 years, so it's the other coast. Okay, January 16th on their walk called the Journey of Nishiyu. Nishiyu, which means the Journey of the People in Cree. All right, they arrived in oh boy, I should know how to say these names, which is 250 kilometers from where they started, and they hope to reach Ottawa by mid-March. Their goal is to support the Idle No More movement and to raise awareness for their culture and the environment. Okay. And then there's a quote from Matthew Mukash, and some more quotes. Okay. So what do you think? Do you think you can maybe answer these questions? This is a bit challenging because it's hard to say what the point of view. It sort of seems kind of favorable to them a little bit, or maybe neutral. It's certainly not disparaging them at all. It seems to be some supportive. They actually have a couple of supportive quotes. They're saying that it's attracted international interest. Okay. So some facts that kind of support them a little bit. Yeah, so it's just an interesting article to practice at. And yeah, beliefs or attitudes, that might be a little tricky for that. What evidence in the article shows the writer or speaker's point of view? So you could go back and point out the fact that they're putting supportive quotes in there. The mother is proud of her daughter, right? And the journey has attracted international interest. So the author really wants you to kind of see that this is a big thing, right? They're not trying to downplay it. They're trying to kind of show that it's a real good accomplishment. So it seems kind of supportive. Okay. All right. Okay. So yeah, it'll become a little easier analyzing articles like that, and we don't really have to, like, we can read it and maybe ask ourselves at the end, to answer the questions. We may not have answers to all the 3 questions that the course text gives you, or the 5 questions that are in the textbook. You may not be able to answer all of those, but you might be able to answer a few of them, and that's really what we're looking for when you're reading an article. So you're looking for the author's viewpoint, you're looking for the author's perspective, okay? And maybe some evidence, right? Is it balanced? In a case like this article, I don't think it's really balanced, because they're almost promoting the walk, aren't they? They're trying to be encouraging. Okay. So the next thing then we're going to look at, it's language and identity. Okay. Now I can I grew up in Ottawa, so we had quite a bit of French. I speak a little bit of French. I probably haven't really spoken it very much, but when I go back to Ottawa, people speak to me in French, and that's fine. But what I got from Ottawa also was my accent, sort of an Ottawa accent. And I remember going to Texas. I went to live in Texas for a while. I worked down there. And I was at a meeting one time, and I said Zed. In one of our products, it started with the letter Z. So I said Zed, and they laughed. So I was working really hard after that to say Z so that they wouldn't laugh at me. But there you go, there's my culture. And so now coming back to Canada, even though it's been a few years, it took me a while to, it's been quite a few years, it took me quite a while to learn to say Z again, and to me, it's worth the effort, because that's my culture, that's my language. It's just a small thing, but it's the way we pronounce it. The same as we spell things differently in Canada, right? We spell color L-O-U-R. Okay, it's in the British way. That's the way we spell color. We spell center C-E-N-T-R-E. Now, when I was younger, I was thinking that we should spell things the way the Americans do, because that's our biggest trading partner and all this. But as I've gotten older, again, you see our age, our life experience, I've come to decide that spelling things the Canadian way, official Canadian way, is important, because that's our identity. Okay. And it's not true that we spell things like the British, because there are quite a few words that we don't spell like the British. Okay. We spell them, I guess you'd say, in the American way. So, so near the bottom of page 5, then in Unit 1, they're talking about language. So here's a quote, and they're just going to send out this quote, and they're not really going to say who said it. This is from the text. It says, "It has been said that to have your culture, you must have your language. This statement is certainly true for First Nations people. In this activity, you'll understand how and why many First Nations people are working to sustain and preserve their language and culture." Okay. So yeah, so what they're saying is it's kind of your identity, isn't it? Language, not language and or culture. So let's take a look here at so this is on page 10, page 10 of the course textbook. So let's go take a look at page 10 here. I have it. Okay, this should be page 10. Okay. So it says here, this is from page 10 of this course text. So it says language is closely tied to identity, as it allows the communication of unique aspects of culture. For many people, it is hard to distinguish between language and identity, as both are expressions of their individual and cultural realities. Okay, so when I was down in Texas with my Canadian accent, even though we speak the same language, I was detached from my own culture, right? And it's a very minor thing because really, for the most part, it's just all it's we're very much the same. But for me, it really kind of made me realize just how far I was away from home. Just those things, just a few words, pronunciation, like that. Okay, so I can't imagine someone who, is in a place where you know, nobody speaks their language, right? And nobody follows their traditions, right? It could be, I imagine it would be quite isolating. And if we go back to that web of influence, and remember I said traditions, cultural traditions, would not at all an influence on me. Really, that's true, and people kind of, find that surprising, but it's just the way I grew up. We didn't really have really strong family traditions, and even if we did, I was away in boarding school, so there were traditions in the boarding school, but we didn't share them in the household. And I was away for a lot of the just the big holidays and stuff like that. So that's not important to me, but I can see it being important to other people, and I can see other people. Some things are really important. Some of the holidays are important. Some of the things that they do around the holidays, right? And language would be very important as well, especially um, if you're isolated from the few number of people that speak your language. Okay, so a shared language provides people with a sense of belonging in which individuals can feel secure in the continuity of the past and the passing of their culture, beliefs, and traditions. Okay, so that sounds pretty good, right? Then it goes on to say the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples recognized these important links. One of the conclusions of the report was that language preservation is essential to the health of individuals and communities. So that's why there are lots of organizations, lots of people working to bring languages and to kind of support um, the preservation of language. There are immersion programs in some of our schools, but it's a challenge because you have to find people who can speak these the languages, and there aren't that many people in some cases. Okay, so this is something that if we recognize how important it is, we can place it the right amount of emphasis on it. Okay. Now here's something. Ways of thinking are also related to language. Now isn't that okay? Language is closely linked to ceremonies, knowledge, beliefs, values, spirituality, and cultures. This means that the loss of languages spoken by First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people also threatens the existence of their unique worldviews. Okay, this is what we're talking about, right? It's your community can be fine. The community will be fine without the language, but it won't necessarily have that traditional worldview, right? It'll have maybe the worldview of the people whose language you're speaking, right? Okay, so this is why we want to think about stuff like this. Elders, traditional teachers, and wisdom keepers play an important role in preserving and passing on their languages. Among the Métis, many elders and senators speak their languages fluently and understand how their languages convey teachings accurately. Faith keepers and elders are skilled orators who give speeches at ceremonies and celebrations. In later chapters, you will learn about the ways in which First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people are working to keep their languages alive. So, and there are lots of programs, and lots of people recognize how important this is. But that's right. We really, um, by studying the importance of language as it relates to culture, then we can understand how much emphasis to place on that. Now, if you're looking, some of these words are pretty clear, but sometimes it may not be clear if you're reading through what uh, some of these words mean. So they have some definitions on the side there. Okay. Now, it says changes to languages. It says when Europeans came into contact with First Nations, there was an intermingling of languages. Europeans often adopted First Nations words such as toboggan and kayak and reinterpreted them, creating new words. First Nations languages acquired new words for things that were new to them, such as farm animals. When First Nations, Métis, and Inuit guided European explorers throughout Canada, they used place names in their own languages. Today, these place names acknowledge the roots of this country. For example, Ontario is a Wendat word meaning beautiful, sparkling water. Okay, so we look at that, and yes, there's all sorts of place names that clearly are influenced by the First Nations languages. So, and that's something that I think it's important for all of us to recognize. So, um, so along those lines, then, going back to the Unit 1, when we talk about language, um, languages are also used to pass on information. And one of the ways that information has been traditionally passed on um, is through stories. Okay. So this is on near the bottom of page 6 of the course material, and this is really kind of profound when you actually think about this. For me, anyway, when I first encountered this idea here, it really kind of made me pause and say, "Wow." Okay, so non-Aboriginal people often recorded First Nations legends as fairy tales or myths, adding convenient morals to sum up a story. However, the stories of elders and accomplished storytellers often have no such ready explanation. Okay? The listener was expected to take time to think about the story and the meaning. This is really very important. Okay, it's very important because remember we talked about worldview. Okay, so I come from a culture, and I said I went to boarding school, so it was a very much um, British type system, right? British boarding school system. And so we looked at fairy tales, and we looked at books and things like that, poetry, even songs. But we always looked at them, and there was always a moral. There was always a lesson in there, right? And because that is the bias of that particular culture is to find a moral, right? So you can't write a story that doesn't have a moral, or it's not going to be taught in school. You can't have a poem that doesn't have something to tell a young boy when he reads it, even if he has to be shown what it means. Okay. I remember studying the song, and the poem, the words, the song Eleanor Rigby by the Beatles. Again, that's a British song, and studying what it actually meant, what they were trying to say in the song. So when, so then when someone with that worldview then tries to listen to an Aboriginal story, it could be quite jarring to them because, or it could be that they're trying to project something onto the story when they hear it, because according to the author of this paragraph, the Aboriginal stories really don't traditionally necessarily have a nicely wrapped up moral to them, right? Maybe they're meant to teach you something. Maybe they're just meant to make you think about something. Okay, and that's a very different way of relaying information and knowledge. So to someone that's not just doesn't have that in their worldview, I think it would be very difficult, and it certainly would not allow them to properly translate or interpret those stories. Okay. Now we start a new paragraph here. It says about Aboriginal stories, or sorry, a new kind of a new subtopic. And I just wanted to point that out because the actual material is on the next page. Okay. So it says here, First Nation societies regularly tell stories. So now I just want to stop you right there because remember we looked on page 8 of the text, and it asks us to ask a bunch of questions about point of view. Okay, well, point of view can also be course material as well. So whoever wrote that is saying this as if it's a fact. First Nations societies regularly tell stories. Is it true in your community? Is it true in your family? Okay, is that something that you're used to? Is it something maybe you've heard, right? Um, okay, so I'm curious, and be interesting to know just how true this is. Okay, because they've said it as if it's like a indisputable fact. Okay, we can question to some extent the course material. It's okay if we can do that. Okay, and maybe this is true, or maybe it's only true for some First Nation community, or maybe they meant to say traditionally in here somewhere, right? Maybe they meant to say the word traditional, or maybe this is actually true. Anyway, First Nation societies regularly tell stories about adventures, ancestors, or different aspects of the land. Through stories and songs, First Nations keep their history alive and pass it on to subsequent generations. Okay. Now, one of the things that they don't. Okay, well, let me just go on to the next one. It says First Nation storytelling has always been a communal experience. Stories brought people together to share a past, to explain the seemingly inexplicable in creation, or to instruct. A powerful story might also make children see the consequences of their actions might have. Well, it's a bit of a contradiction, isn't it? They just said that there may not necessarily be a moral to it, but maybe there is. And it's funny that they didn't really say anything in here um, about humor, and I don't know, but some of the stories I've heard were pretty funny. So I don't know. Maybe they were meant to be funny as well. Okay. And then again, it says all Aboriginal people use stories for entertainment. Yeah, I see that's again, they're being pretty general here. So I'd really be interested in your feedback. Is this true? Is it true in general? Is it true for your community? Um, it, would you agree with that? Okay, again, we're allowed to be critical about the course material. But we know that the people that developed this probably know quite a bit, but we can also challenge some of the things, some of the assumptions that they've made. All Aboriginal people use stories for entertainment, recording history, and education. As a teaching tool, stories are a valuable way to educate young people about the values and beliefs that First Nation consider important for their members. Okay, now I've heard this. I've definitely heard, a mother telling a story about, it was about frogs, in to her child, and it had to do with being able to tell which way the wind was blowing and something about the coming weather. And it has, it was a very interesting story. But again, I probably didn't have enough background to really fully understand it. Okay. Now, it says teaching stories fall into different categories. Some are similar to fables. Okay, well, now they're fables as in with explicit morals. So Aesop's fables is very common in Western culture, where they have their cautionary tales. If you do something wrong, this is going to happen to you. Another popular kind of teaching story is the open-ended story. Here the lesson is subtle, possibly even obscure, and is left to the students or listeners to discover. The discovery story educates listeners gradually. The goals or morals of a story reveal themselves to the listener as his or her maturity and life experiences develop. It's interesting. So maybe they tell you a story when you're 7 or 8, and then when you're 20, you go, oh, well, that's what that meant. That's really good. Okay. So we can, anyway, you can read the rest of that. And what we'll do when we come back tomorrow, I believe that we have some stories to look at in the textbook. Yeah, actually on page 13 of the textbook, which is also, I posted on Facebook, there are a couple of short little stories that you can read and sort of get an idea if you haven't seen them, or if you're trying to get an idea of what exactly the authors of the course were trying to tell us. All right. So